I don't even ask anymore. Just put it up there.
It's all
Um,
good.
I'm so glad.
And
Welcome everybody to our Thursday book launch. It's a lovely group, and we are getting to celebrate. This is our second time celebrating with you, Paul.
yeah,
Or
this is
for
the other way we did the first book and of Something Wonderful, and now it's a few years later,
I
so
know, and
here
we
we
get to
are.
celebrate again.
Yeah,
Something necessary.
I seem to manage to do two books. Who knew?
I love it. I love it. It makes me happy. It makes me excited when we have people that have, published another book to have them back on. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Paul, and then I'm going to turn it right over to him. This is Paul Jones's second collection of poems coming from Redhawk Publications. I put a link in the chat section so you can go there. We also want to remind people that if you'd like to help out the lovely one of our beloved towns in Western North Carolina, Burnsville, you can go to bookshop.org and you can designate a bookstore, and Plot Hound is what you would be looking for if you would like to order something necessary for someone and also support Western North Carolina and independent bookstore. Something Wonderful was the first book, and we got to celebrate that. That was in 2021. 3 years later, we get to celebrate Something Necessary. His work has also been published in several anthologies, including Best American Erotic Poems, 1800 to Present. I love this. This is always one of my favorite details, Paul. A manuscript of his poems crashed into the moon's surface in 2019. Another moonshot in February 2024 landed successfully. In 2021, Jones was inducted into the North Carolina State Computer Science Hall of Fame. He is Professor Emeritus of Library and Information Science at UNC Chapel Hill. It's another one of my favorite details. Why is it cut off? In 2024, Jones's poem Geode was plagiarized multiple times by notorious serial offender. What is his name? Why is it not showing up on my thing?
I don't know. John Kucera,
Oh
Kucera,
yeah.
Kucera.
Okay.
I've heard he's
Yeah, no,
back.
that's local. Oh, really?
Yeah, not doing me, but there was a warning out to
Or to be on the
the
lookout for your
editor
stuff being
to
stolen.
watch for him. Yeah,
And I'm just going to point out we had a lovely thing come up just now from Regina. Wait, did I hear something about erotic poems? Yes, you did.
you did, and
I'm going to turn it over to you.
when we get to question time, you can ask me. I'm not going to read that one tonight, however, but I'll talk about it a little bit then. And, I'm going to read poems that I think all but one are in Something Necessary, and I've got the apes looking over my shoulder to make sure that I stay on. And I really appreciate being here. As you know, I enjoyed coming to other people's readings, and so it's nice to have one of my own here for a while. I'm going to start with a poem called My Mother Wished Herself a Crow. My mother wished herself a crow. In turn, I became her worm. When she tugged at me, I tugged back. She always dressed in black. I, like the ground, preferred to be shaded in browns. Sometimes she seemed to hang in the air, moving in ways I would never dare. She was dark, and I was drawn to all dark places, all dark things. I still imagine the wild movements of her broad black wings over me, shadowing me. I was odd to her. She, the bird, knew her head and tail, her feathers short and long. At both ends, I seemed to her the same, featherless and feature-free. She hardly recognized me. I called her name, as close to a call as I could come, as I crawled on concrete after a hard rain. I called, and she, most motherly, came. She draped me in her beak. In a moment I was raised, airborne, and soon to be high flown. How different from the world I'd known, a world where I had to make my own way. I wanted the earth again. She only offered air. In the end, I fell away. To me, soil and loam felt alive, felt like home. She in her own way fled to her heights, her nest suspended, eerie, unattended. She in time came to rest here, among my roots, under my leaves, beneath soft green moss. To be inside the earth for her was something new, the last thing she would do. I made her a mausoleum, a smooth and even mound. I did what worms do, and she became the ground. The next poem is called Of Rock Doves. We call these doves pigeons because they are many, because we once built them cotes, because we collected their guano, because we spread it on melon patches and near tomato beds, because they bobbed their heads in their staggering walk like professional wrestlers at the end of their careers, because they can't see straight ahead any other way, because they are easily misled, because no matter what, some find their way back home, because when some vanish, there are always many more, because their name is an echo of the hungry noises that come from their flimsy nest, because they raid each other's nest, because they kill their neighbor's young, because they kill their own young, because together in a group, they're called a drille, which means morning in French, because we eat their young, because they taste so sweet and have very small bones. So the next poem takes place in County Mayo in Ireland at a small churchyard. It's called Burial by Permission Only. So there's a sign in this churchyard that says burial by permission only. Why would that have there? Here's a reason. Burial by permission only. This would be his last enjoyment. Although now dead, still a bit odd. We took his ashes straight from Mass. First to the pub where it began. As night settled on the churchyard, we leapt the wall, pushed through the yews. His body earned in light tin he'd chosen, paid with a debit card, as empty as this chapel's pews. He'd given all to romantic love and drink. She believed only in the first. Both married, but that had long given in. His respect for marriage was legendary, mostly in the breach. Tit for tat, and the pair's talk soon led to bed. Some years of not so secret tryst. She died first, her husband next, laid side by side, stone at head, a couple never known to kiss, much less dabble in lust or sex. That's where our dear friend came in. And that night we brought him to be on top of her as she last asked. We didn't so much bury him as say a prayer, hum a hymn, turn over a clump of grass. A wisp of his gray dust puffed up and mixed with moonlight and gray mist, but most joined her in the holy sod, where the pair are at last blessed by, we hope, a forgiving God. So thanks. I can see your comments. I can't see them all while this is happening, so I'll catch up on them in the great tradition. Now that we've gotten to church, let's go inside. This one is called Altar Call. I'm sure some of you have participated in this practice, in which you go and affirm or reaffirm your faith as part of the service. This is strange to me, first as a Presbyterian and later as an Episcopalian, because we don't do that kind of thing. But I have been drawn in. Altar call. If I had not gone up, I would have missed my ride. So it didn't take long for me to decide to join in the soft swaying line of shoe-shined, one-mind mankind. I became another link in the salvation chain, unsure if I would be saved, and if so, saved from what? Maybe a bully's punch in the gut, or maybe from lust. While I feared the first, I was lured by the last. After all, that's why I came. Now I forget her name. I was flattered when she asked me to her church, until her car filled with 5 other anxious, tight-jeaned teens. Isn't that the way love finds you? You get drawn in by the unknown, by promises, smiles, nods, and winks. You never stop to think where the line will lead or end. Then you kneel at love's altar and become a man. The next poem, we're going to go out of church and into nature here a little bit. The next poem takes place in Weymouth, Southern Pines, at the Boyd House, outside the Boyd House, really in the Longley Pine Preserve there, where red-cockaded woodpeckers are found. And this is, of course, called red-cockaded woodpecker. This bird seeks out the ruined heart of tall pines, trees that take a long time to set down roots before they work on what will be their crowns. Trees that reach out like high school cheerleaders, each limb pom-pommed with long needles, limbs that know how to move with the wind, limbs that rarely know the weight of snow. None of this can protect their red hearts. Something worms its way past the bark, the way rust finds a way through armor, the way trust is lost between lovers. This bird knows how to find its way in when hearts are tender, while resin can still flow, where homes can be built, for nests, where families can be raised. Its work starts with failure at the heart. The next poem is, the subject is bees. Well, not all the subjects. It's about, I rented a farmhouse and the bees made a home in the kitchen wall. And this is a little sonnet about that. The hive and the wall. Sometimes when a soul has more to say, it holds on to some place, some person, or just moves in between joists and frames, taking the shapes of bees, even their names, their endless buzz near the too warm kitchen. Unlike other ghosts, they work by day. They still need light and the scent of wet grass, flowers that love summer and last until fall. I say they, but I mean they act as one, many creatures made of one spirit, a mass that's a fused, united, yet scattered all. That's what it takes to get the job done. This may not be true, but here's what I believe. One day, all the bees in one swarm will leave. The next poem is called Talking in the Dark. I think it might be a sonnet too. I tend to go that way a lot, varieties of sonnets. Talking in the dark can be a way to begin falling in love or becoming friends again after a difficult day, in summer when late light walks away, when the kitchen knives laid on the table hold galaxies that remind us to be playful despite the sharp edges the sun showed us. Paired in the dark and passion, night knows us in ways we don't know ourselves. Something in us, coded in our cells, goes back to the time of sleeping in caves, when words were made to be believed, where the walls were painted for dreams, for magic, for hunts with spears, daggers, and hatchets. The people on the walls are working together. They have no anger. They have only hunger. Okay. The next poem is the poem that got plagiarized a lot, and I often don't read it because it's got a kind of density to it. It's a hinged double sonnet, if you care about that kind of stuff, which you may or may not be able to hear. And but I like the way it sounds, and I don't think you have to care about what it means. It's all that much. If it sounds really good, why not? So this poem is called Geode, which is about a geode, which is also hinged. So there we go. Geode. Climb inside this stone to find a forest, a respite of calm order from Earth's chaos. Here the trees are limbless and liminal, boundless as they build their boundaries. The particular oxides that quartz takes into its predictable geometry color every copse of six-sided trunks. Having never seen light, they are greedy. They break and bend the sun's strongest rays. The whole of the spectrum, you can see it as if seeing an egg pour from its shell or a forest in the first month of fall. Why would a stone hide its gifts? Modesty? Perhaps something in a stone wants mystery. What mystery could this stone want? Empty its center, unaware of its destiny, never having heard a red wolf's howl, or the way a wren breaks out in a scold at a climbing snake or a hawk's silhouette. Despite all of this, nothing in the stone strays. Nothing wanders from some swamp or reedy marsh. What is here is here. Only a slow flux, a fresh breeze that has just found these trees. These crystals, pyramid capped like monks of an older order. Their diaries kept safe in caves, held shut by iron nails, are now open after centuries to us. Just the sight, the touch of them, and we feel blessed. Okay, so I'm going to close out with a poem that's more hopeful because, you know, it's been a bad time, particularly if you like Carolina football, which is always a losing proposition. We're entering the time in which good things begin to happen. That is Carolina basketball. And that's because basketball is a kind of poetry, which is the title. Basketball, the round ball, the brown ball, the rock, an alley-oop, an air ball, an assist, a one-on-one for a one-and-one, off the backboard to the hot shot, the ball hog, the pistol, to the big man with the baseball pass, off the bench to the baseline, out of the box in one, for a buzzer beater, a bonus from the bricklayer, double dribble, double, double, double nickel, double team, double bonus, finger roll for a field goal, a floater to the forward for a 4-point play after that flagrant foul. That breakaway on a fast break, followed by a fadeaway. The guard guns a granny shot. The center pivots when he's hot. Half-court jump shot heating up. Lay up, lay in, then laid out in overtime in extra minutes. Palming in the paint when he should be posting up. Over the rainbow for a rim shot after a running gun against the man-to-man. Up and down for a turnaround. Then a swish, a swat in the air, a trade, a travel, a turnover, a slam dunk, then on the rim for a tip-in, another nail from the perimeter, nothing but the net, then drop the dime. The whistle says, we're out of time. Thank you. And I get the time for questions. Thank you.
That was fabulous. Everybody, if y'all want to unmute, I know I'm going to do that, and then we can just take a moment to say fabulous. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And that last one, Paul, the language, the music to that, I was just thinking Joseph Pathanti would love that poem. I mean, that is one that would be so much fun for poetry out loud. Oh my gosh.
Sorry, Paul, I'm Duke basketball.
I'm sorry. I think you started that the right way. When you say sorry and Duke, you're in the right sentence. The only time the word Duke is acceptable is when it's related to mayonnaise.
Pop up here.
Duke mayonnaise, fine. Other Duke, highly questionable.
Cal, I think we've got the delay again.
Cal, I'm getting a little echo on you, bud.
Yeah, I just it happens, Cal, so I just have to mute you. Oh, it was.
Thank you so much, and I look forward to reading your comments. It looks like there are a hell of a lot there. So
yeah, you're gonna have fun, Paul, and I will of course send it to you because there's no way you could scroll through all of that because we were just having a blast.
Before we leave, and I want to hear you guys. Somebody asked earlier about erotic poetry. So the poem is in Best American Erotic Poetry, 20th Century to Present. It's one of the David Lehman anthologies. He's only done one of. Apparently, there is no erotic poetry in America before 18 whatever. But that's not, at least not written and known, but I mean, at least by Lehman. And so the thing about the poem that I have in there is it's complicated because it's from the 13th century. It wasn't written in English. I didn't actually write it. It's a poem attributed to the greatest poet in Wales, Dafydd ap Gwilym, who we would call David Williamson. And Dafydd had the seven. There's a whole bunch of things about Welsh prosody that I borrowed for this. So there were several translations of this poem, which is a poem addressing his manly parts. In particular, it's just called "To My Penis," and so it's not actually that erotic, but it is filthy. And apparently, if you're really filthy, that's an okay thing. And so, in this poem, there's a lot of what I did was there were a lot of translations, but none of them used the Welsh prosody in the translation very much. And I really wanted to pull it back to that. And I spent about 8 years, I shouldn't say, but I will, fucking around with it because after all, and trying to understand without understanding the Welsh language, understanding at least the sounds. The lucky thing about Welsh at that time, from the 14th century forward, is it seems to have been written phonically. So you can actually, if you understand how the sounds work for the representations of characters, you get a pretty good idea of the sound and how the internal, because it's very, you're familiar with Dylan Thomas or with Hopkins, probably, you know how much internal sound goes on in there. So you set up, there's a rhythm and in rhyme, but there's also counter rhyme and counter sound going on. So I wanted to push all that in there. And I was kind of, when I was working on it, I was kind of fed up with myself because I was trying to use myself as too much of the subject. And I said, well, the way to really learn prosody is to take the self out and just focus on something kind of crazy. And then I was at a large group reading. Gosh, it was the first Scarborough Poetry Festival. And there was a couple of women there who said, we're looking for erotic poems. We have the No Tell Motel journal. And if you have dirty poems, send it to us. And I went, well, I've got this dirty poem. And I sent it a few places and like it immediately came back because how many people wanted a 14th century Welshman talking about his penis? It turns out a lot of people in the long run. So because what he does is he's a very comical writer, and he starts out as a curse poem, like, you know, you got me in all this trouble and you need to be under attention. But as he talks about how bad it is, it ends up being a praise poem. Because if you hadn't been, if everybody didn't want you, if you weren't so desirable, if you weren't so strong, so long, so whatever, then I wouldn't be in this horrible shape that I'm in, being sued. And I'm getting, this is so male. You got me in this trouble. I didn't really do anything. and so it's a very funny piece because of that. But he's a wonderful poet of nature, of religion, but his really sharp thing that he does, that I enjoy, is that he's sort of a buffoon. He's like trying to be a romantic poet because he heard about the romantic poets from French and people from Brittany who'd come over to do trade and stuff. So he has all this romantic pretensions. But the weather in Wales does not reflect the weather in Italy or southern France. And so like he will invite this young woman to his bower that he's built in the woods, and it's raining like hell and she doesn't come. Or she does come and there's a thunderstorm and she just gets out of there. Or he tries to meet I'll shut up on this for a minute, but I love this stuff. So his girlfriend, who people weren't married to people that they loved necessarily in those days, unlike now. But his girlfriend is married to a older man. And so he goes to visit. She says, well, he's going to be at the market. You should come. And so he runs to see her, but the guy's inside the house because it was too rainy and he couldn't cross the river with his stuff. So he looks out and the man thinks he sees that Willem. So that Willem goes and hides with these geese in the goose's cage. And his whole poem is written talking about like geese, like, be quiet. I'm not a fox. I'm like one of you. It's all about, and also about how he's yearning. So he's really quite wonderful. Even he tries to go to church and meet women. It doesn't really. I can't see this one. So.
It's No Tell Motel. I went and found the anthology.
Okay. Oh my
God! I'm trying to look up your poem, Paul.
I don't think the one I had, I think, has a red cover on it or something.
Oh, does it have a different color?
Yeah, it has.
This was the second floor, so they might have had a.
Yeah, that's the second one they did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
So somehow David Lehman found this, and
awesome.
Then he wrote me and said, I hope you'll like let me buy one-time rights for like $75 or something. And I was going, well, sure. I mean, anyway, that's the story. But we can talk about other stuff.
What's the name of that Welsh poet?
Dafydd.
Yeah, could you?
Willem. Dafydd. That DD, that 2D together is a TH sound. Ap, AP. That means son of, or from the family of, Gwilym, which is like Williams, but GWILYM. I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's the right way. I get the I and Y flipped sometimes. Thank you. Yes, like that. And there's so much work attributed to him because he was such a character. And he occupies this interesting time in which the English had taken over Wales. And so the Lords were out of power and they had been the primary employer of poets. So he still kept trying to get involved with the Lords. So he kept doing these praise poems. He kept trying to get some backing from the church, so he would do that. But he also went to bars a lot and read there. And so he even has this great one in which he's at this pub and he's, of course, sure the innkeeper's daughter is in love. And the more he drinks, the more he's sure of it. And then he tries to go meet her during the night, but he falls on top of a bunch of English peddlers. And they beat him up and chase him out. And then he wants to come back in. It's very, very, I mean, it's in a certain style, but it's very, very funny to me. If you're willing to deal with some 14th century translation, weird stuff, and syntactically, Welsh is quite different. So
I just wish I had. I don't know where the first edition, the first. Anthology was, because I kid you not, I would have been so happy to hear it.
Well, there I am in there somewhere.
Yeah, thanks for putting it in the chat section.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Paul or any thoughts that you wanted to share?
Where do we get a signed copy? This is work that needs to be read and thought about.
Yeah, well, thank you.
All the layers weren't coming through.
There's a lot of density in there, and several of them are sonnets or double sonnets in the case of Geode, or others have some sort of knots ode form going on. I like, as you might guess, to poems tell you how they want to build themselves, and if you have read and have a lot of this shit in your, this formal stuff, you can accidentally sort of invent your own part of it, or you can see that it's the guide, the road that's going to take you there. So that's a lot. So I guess I should put my home address in there, but here's what to do. You can send me email and I'll take care of it tomorrow by sending you our
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. That way people can get in touch with you. I wanted to go back to what Shabala, what you said about the density, because I felt like these poems were fascinating with how there started being more and more extended metaphor and double meanings and layers of meanings. I really felt like I was writing down as much as I could in the chat section, but was like, I need to sit with this for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
Particularly the
density
poem
in a
about
bad way.
peace.
It's density
In a rich way.
yeah,
Well,
the
thank you.
technique, all of that, but then the
Mhm.
meanings underneath, because all the technical stuff would be worthless if you weren't saying something.
Bingo. Yeah, I mean,
True.
when I talk about the architecture of it, the architecture is like, you know, if you're listening to music, you want a bass line going on, and then you build the interesting stuff on top. And then there's an interaction between all that. And for me, that's really an important thing. So it's not about the architecture. The architecture is a way
Mhm.
for me, and I hope the reader, to discover what's going on. Because I don't generally start with, I have this story. Even the burial one, somebody saw that thing and said, you know, there must be a story here. And I just said, well, I guess I'll start making up one. You know, it has to start there has to be a story behind what kind of people would do unauthorized burial in the churchyard. You know, why would you not get permission? Well, you have to go to the pub, you know, and there has to be some scandal. So after that, you know, and what happens in there is there's some technical things that I like doing, in which all the end words in one stanza and rhyme with the end words of the next stanza, and there's some interlacing and stuff that goes on, and also counter sound, which is important. But that makes it so that it needs to be, you know, it's like sugar in your tea or something. You know, you want the tea, but you also want a little bit of sugar. So I don't start saying, oh, this will be a great sonnet. Usually I just start writing, and then it sort of takes something. You know, the language starts telling you where to go, and then things start happening out of your consciousness or your heart or your past, you know, or your psychology somewhere. Stuff starts like showing up because you're filling in. And it then, for me, it's this big moment of discovery, which I really enjoy.
Yeah.
You know, and
Cal, you had a question? You're muted, so you'll have to
unmute there.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we wanted to bury someone in our churchyard in the garden. It was a beautiful thing, sort of, you know, on the edge of the property. And we thought it was really appropriate for this individual. Somebody happened to know that you had to get permission. And so we asked the town, and you had to go to the town and ask for permission, and they said no. The reasons that they have, yeah, I don't know where, I was just reading recently that there's a problem with human bodies contaminating the ground.
You don't want them in the water system. Yeah, that's. But there are places that do green burials in Orange County. Bluestone does this, and we talked to our church about it, which of course is a Episcopalian church that goes back to the 18th century, and they went, can you do natural burials there? And they went, well, hell, there have been natural burials there for like 150 years. So, you know, the churchyard there there's so many bodies in that thing, you know, that it's not much of an issue. But other places, I mean, and places that have water issues, like you want to talk about poetry or burials, I'm sorry, as you can see, there are a lot of things that interest me, and I'll just go off. So stop me. Let's get back.
I think that's
Because you
exactly
guys
what
want to
we
do
like.
it. You
We're
guys
enjoying this, so
Yeah.
keep going.
And I was going to say, that's exactly why your poems have such richness. And I also want to come back to the fact that, Paul, it is obvious that you enjoy writing, like that it is a fun endeavor of discovery and challenge, because you do challenge yourself so often in choosing forms and having, you know, the end words of a stanza rhyme with the other words of
Yeah,
the
a lot of it
words.
goes in and out.
Yeah.
I mean,
And so you like a challenge, but you're also on an adventure. And I think that's one of the reasons why your poetry appeals to me so deeply, because it is multifaceted and it is fun. I can tell you didn't belabor. I mean, you, not to say you didn't work and do all the things all of
there's
us
plenty
do.
of work in there, I can promise you.
Yeah, but that there's a true joy.
But I like it. It's good
Yeah,
work.
it's obvious. It's
You know,
good work.
The first draft is the most, I don't know which is most painful, the first draft or the second or the fourth revision, you know, because you're starting to like it about the fourth time around. You don't want to change it, but you know, it's telling you, you fool, like you're not going deep enough, or your word choices are so cliche, or you work too hard on the rhyme. You know, you shouldn't do that. But yeah, I will say that I spend more time reading than I do writing, and that I think is very valuable. I mean, that's part of the pleasure. I love reading poetry, and I love reading it like this. Talking about Ap Gwilym, I'm not bound by the 20th century or by my contemporaries. So, I'm perfectly happy to read obscure people like Thomas Traherne or Ap Gwilym. None of these people are within their specialty or obscure, but outside of their specialty, they're, people on the street don't go, oh gosh, I've got to read the Centuries of Thomas Traherne, or I've got to read a long poem by Keats, because Keats can't do plot worth a shit, but the lines are so great. Who cares? Read the, you can read the Lamia and not care that the plot is nutso. You can, and that it's not the pacing is off. You can just say, God, Keats can really write a stanza like nobody's business. And he didn't have long to do them. In his case, I think they're less than 200 poems that are credited to him. So it's possible to read them all and then read them again.
Yeah. Have you read any Ramprasad Sen? He's one of the Bengali Bhakti poets.
No, the only Bengali that I really know, of course, is
Tagore. Only because Ramprasad Sen is he has a bizarre sense of humor that you might enjoy.
Oh, that sounds great.
He's a little bit on the obscure side, but I mentioned him because of the sense of humor. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
That's another one for the chat section.
That way I'll be able to get it later, and other people can share it too, because that would be a lot of fun. I mean, there's a great, tradition of Bengali writing forever, and Tagore helped bring that, even in his sort of Victorian English, to us, and I've enjoyed the work that, Yeats and Pound kind of found him, really. And I think in part they found him because they went, there needs to be a colonial poet, and we will never get an Irish poet in because we're too busy killing English people. We have to get people that aren't actively killing English people at the moment.
At the moment.
But Tagore was great, in that way. And now you read him, he's, he does carry a little bit of that Victorian sensibility with him. But since I'm reading for pleasure, I don't get that angry. Or that put off. I'm reading 14th century and 15th century English people too. So, and they don't know that language has not a whole lot to do, but the patterning, the loveliness, and the subject matter, the breadth of subject matter I'm interested in too, and the place of imagination, and as a way of seeing inside yourself and to see out into the world.
Actually, I really like that, the place of imagination of the way as a way of seeing inside and outside the world. That's perfect. And thank you for putting that in there, Shamala, because I like how you said with a bizarre sense of humor or an odd sense of humor. And Paul, immediately you went, and yes, I'm interested.
Immediately. Yeah, I mean, well, a lot of those, that I'm accused of this, and rightfully so. And I enjoy it. I mean, there's something that Absalom and Philip Larkin have in common. And also in 20th century America, Tom Lux, who was one of my teachers, who, that something wacky and fun is going to happen, but something deep is going to come right behind it. And I think when that happens, the knife is sharper.
Yes.
Not surprised that Tom Lux was one of your teachers. That makes sense. That's awesome.
We found each other.
Any other questions or thoughts?
Yeah, because we need to let people read here. I want to hear you.
Then we will. All right, Paul, that's what we'll do. We'll move to open mic and I will go down the list. I'm starting with Karen.
Mute myself.
Karen.
Okie doke. All right, this one's not as long as some of the ones I've been reading lately, so you're welcome for that. This is Eating Spinach. I have never been the pretty one. My sister has and is. Somebody has to be. It's fine. It isn't me. I own a lot of other these, the poet, and the one who always has loved spinach. That is me. It's true. My sister would not eat her spinach, would not even touch it with her fork. We don't know why, but I would eat my spinach. I would ask for more, and I would eat my more, and I would ask another night if we could have it once again. It made my daddy grin. It made my mother ask my sister, honey, please just eat this little dab of spinach. I'm the poet still, and still this poem is not about the spinach. I should say I loved my parents very much. I did. I loved and love my sister too, and spinach, though my loving spinach never made my mother love me anymore. Still, this poem is not about the spinach. Nothing ever has been, even though I always have loved eating spinach, and I always told my mother so. Spinach. It's not about the spinach.
Wow. Karen, that did not make my mother love me anymore. That poem took some turns that I did not see coming. I really love that. Thank you. Check the chat section because other people are writing stuff and it's coming up just as fast as I was talking. Cal, it's your turn if you would like to read. Love to hear you.
All right. I wanted to find a short poem too, and also I picked this one because the first day of deer hunting in our part of North Carolina is on Saturday, and it's a poem about, I'm not a hunter, I hate the idea even, but I ended up writing this poem. It's called Clarity. 5 a.m., chill in the air, Orion rising in the east, his belt shining at the pine tops, crickets louder than the belt line, his arms rise crazily over. Hard to believe there's no meaning in this. Time to go hunting? Hunting for what?
I was trying to write down hard to believe there's no meaning in this. That's fabulous, Cal. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Cricket's louder than the belt line. Christy, I'm ready for you.
I haven't read this poem before. I realized this today that it's in my book, but I have never read it at a reading. So this is called Gilded Cage, and it is my attempt at a Senryu. Pretty once, fill space, false light blurs clear door, illumines knobs that will not turn. Thank you.
Wow. That's gorgeous. Illumines knobs that will not turn. That's gonna stick with me. Yeah, everybody's given these one lines that I'm like trying to put down real quick so I don't forget it. And then it's thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Catherine, I will pause the recording if that is correct. Jamala?
Yes, ma'am. Just unmuting. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat.
Yeah, I did too. Too often that frog
Maybe it hopped across the country or something. Okay, this is called a Requiem for Old Kuala Lumpur. And just a context, Kuala Lumpur when I was growing up was a, I don't know, Greensboro, Richmond, Baltimore sized, large town, small city. It's now a baby LA with 12-lane highways. And they like skyscrapers in the Far East for whatever reason. So, Requiem for Old Kuala Lumpur. What is the poetry of towers? Metal, concrete, glass, brittle, inflexible, hard. Sky hiding, earth waiting. Is there earth also waiting, still beneath this race of modernity? Holding the quiet earth, slow, sweet of long ago, when I sucked nectar from tender hearts of hibiscus flowers, or sat beneath areca bushes, returning to the womb of green warmth, living nature, that rustling, moving, stroked my skin, my soul, feeding heart, soothing mind. What do the towers feed or soothe?
Yes,
Yep.
right.
I love the embodiment in that poem.
I do too.
Pat, when you are ready, don't forget to unmute. Thank you,
Oh
Shamala.
my gosh,
Trying to get myself, oh, there's myself again. Well, since we mentioned erotic poetry, I think I'm going to read one that I don't usually read, but I'm reading it tonight because I got the title after I took this to my poetry group several years ago. And my dear friend Susan Leffler is a member of that group, and she was talking about her 50th anniversary coming up. And they all gave this poem the title, Anniversary Poem. They said it sounded like an anniversary poem. So here you go. It's from this book. I'll just be shameless about it. When There Were Horses, 2021, same year that Paul's Something Wonderful came out. Anniversary poem. I waited 6 months to say yes. 6 months after we first kissed, lips pressed to lips longer than the wispy half kisses we always exchanged. I wanted to open my mouth, feel your tongue find mine, the way our bodies fit together, standing in the rain, as if we had always done this, as if we could clothe desire. When you took my hand, the concrete shattered, the world became dust. I did not know my name or yours. We were already the same person. That day, if you had asked, I would have followed you anywhere. Instead, you said, what are we going to do? So I said what I had to say. Nothing. Meaning everything. Always. Every blessed and damned thing.
I love that poem. If you don't already have that book, that was a perfect preview for the poems within. Oh, that's so good. Janice, I know I had said I'd circle back around. I hope that it's good timing and we can hear something from your book.
Sure, happy to. And my book is How to Cut a Woman in Half from Able Muse Press. And this poem is called Minefield. The African gray parrot calls to her in her late husband's voice, keeps it up until she drops night on the cage. The doorbell can mean more flowers, or a neighbor with a crock pot, salad, and homemade bread. An upbeat dental hygienist phones to book his 6th-month recall visit. The Blockbuster account is in his name. Coming home, each time she's tricked for an instant by his car in the garage. The classical FM station asks if, again this year, they can count on him. On the patio where he smoked Cuban cigars, the pottery ashtray fills with rain.
What a powerful final image. That whole poem. I want to remind people to be checking the chat section because we're all putting stuff in there and I don't want people to miss it. Thank you, Janice.
You're welcome.
Regina, got you. And then Julian.
Okay, so this poem is as new can be. This is what is necessary. Laughter at lust, irreverent rhyme, fingers within the fellowship rhythmically flying across keys to share our love as he, poet, poetically shoots the breeze. Tonight, this is necessary. Wondering what everyone is thinking, imagining their hearts are beating like mine, believing they are, whether it's true or not. For me, this is what is necessary. This is what is necessary. Monkeys grinning and swinging from trees, looking back at our human week, chuckling at the folly in this home of the free, wondering if there is more love in these sacred pages that would soothe these savage beasts. This is what's necessary. Poetry, friends, affirmation, illumination, space, grace. This is what is necessary. Cover me in the necessary. I need necessary now. Thank you.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. And I love how that ties right into something necessary. Did you?
I did it. I
Love it.
I couldn't think of anything else to say. I said, so I just kind of jotted down some things that I was feeling as, Paul was reading and people were interacting.
Beautiful.
So often that's how I feel when I come to Redheaded as well. So
Right. Come on. Our community is so amazing. Julian, you don't have to turn on your video, but we would love to hear a poem.
Yeah, I can't get can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Don't worry
Okay.
about it.
All right.
just glad
I
you're
can't
here.
get my picture up there, but you know how I look anyway. Primavera. Yesterday in bright air, tentative camellias stripped like bloodroot buried past the quick. We stretched thin and flat as thumbed brown leaves, turned in the season's chosen indifference again together. Lent is come with love. Last night, the little dogwood just outside our window flared in the dark rain like a crucifix. Thank you.
Oh, wow. You're always, Julian, I find myself going that the images just stay with me. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Paul, thank you for letting us celebrate the second book from Redhawk Publications. Reach out to
Yeah.
Paul if you'd
Yes,
like
Paul.
us.
Great
Thank
poems.
you.
Thank
Could I
you
ask a
all so much.
quick
I
question
really
before we
appreciate
go?
it.
Definitely,
Julian?
Shamala.
Is that poem in a book? The one you read? Sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I really wanted to know where that poem was.
It's in my little book called Reading Evening Prayer in an Empty Church,
Thank
which
you.
you can order on Amazon.
Thank you.
Or I can send you a signed copy if you want to write to me.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I have your email. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah,
Thank
okay. I
you.
was going to say, if you don't have his email, we can put it in the chat section. Let's remember to do that so that everybody knows where they could get things. I'm glad that Pat and Janice held up their books. So make sure that we do that. So it's a way of supporting each other. And I'm actually going to read a long poem. I actually am.
Great.
And don't want to do
Lovely.
this, but I was also in the No Tell Motel, and I probably haven't read this poem in I don't know how long. But it's called The Go-Go Dancer Speaks. 1, how legs work. My body, a slick tool, and Vaseline on my teeth, so I smile. I stand just behind the stage before the song begins, legs and fishnets tight as tiny ropes, and a feeling like a fall on ice when a body does the inevitable, the follow through of what's already in motion. 2, how eyes work. Watching you watch me, to a hammer, everything's a nail. My eyes aren't mirrors of my soul. Mirrors are where you look to see yourself. I know what you are looking for in my eyes, and I won't ask you later what color they are. Everyone wants to be nailed when they're hammered. 3, how a mouth works. Kissing a stranger is like biting aluminum foil with metal fillings. Sharp tingles I know I shouldn't enjoy. Before I kiss him, the moment before tasting too tart lemonade, I know I'll drink because my mouth's already decided. Motel, motel.
All right.
Thanks, guys. But I thought, well, if I can't find Paul's poem, y'all will hear the Go-Go Dancer. I think that's in Spill.
Yeah.
Once again, so good to be in your company, and I want to make sure, yeah, okay. Be well. Next week, we may not have somebody because the person I had scheduled is in Western North Carolina and we're having some trouble with logistics. So
Okay.
we shall see. Samantha is her name, and we'll see. If so, I'll make sure that y'all get the information. Be well.
Just
Yep.
one thing.
Loved
Okay.
all this poetry. It's great. Yeah.
Thank you, Malika and Paul.
Always so good.
Yes.
Thank